good.
You know, nothing out of the
doing well.
ordinary. I mean, until we were, pulled off the plane by federal police.
If you are on board, just make your way forward to the front of the cabin.
Wait.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They knew all along.
I'm going to talk to you. Okay. Hello. Give it a chance.
Yeah, fine.
And don't mess with the CIA, they'll torture you.
In relation to easing where you guys run at Point Gap.
The remote Pine Gap spy station.
A collection of domes in the desert, but a place very few Australians know much about at all.
The most powerful American intelligence facility outside of the United States.
No, close the gate, close the... No, stop!
This is by far the scariest video we've ever made. We teamed up with friendly Geordies to sneak into Pine Gap, which is one of the CIA's most important spy bases. But before we get into that, the most obvious question is, what is this giant American base doing on the other side of the world in the middle of Australia? Well, first off, it shouldn't be controversial to say the CIA wants to control the world, right? Like, surely there's no one out there who thinks they're not doing that. They've got the most advanced satellites in the world and they're sucking up everyone's information, which, good on you, but they've got a big problem, right? And I'll explain it to you over there.
All right, so let's pretend this globe here is planet Earth, and then this can of toxic industrial lubricant is a satellite. So these satellites are flying all around Earth, just booming their signals down. But the issue with the Americans, right, is that they've got spy bases here. They can only access satellites up here. They've got no access to the ones down here. But if they were to build a satellite base in a foreign country like Australia, suddenly they've got access to all the satellite signals coming down here. Pretty clever, right? So if they wanted to, send a missile into a wedding in, let's say, in Iraq, or if they wanted to, eavesdrop on conversation. If they wanted to eavesdrop on conversations down in Madagascar, they just do it through Pine Gap.
Now, thanks to some average-looking whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and much hotter ones like Christopher Boyce, we have access to all these leaked documents exposing the inner workings of Pine Gap. Now get this. The base is codenamed Rainfall, and it's part of a top-secret international spy infrastructure called Five Eyes. These CIA guys are literally out here laughing as Bond films. It's so embarrassing to read. But thanks to these documents, we know all about Pine Gap. We know about their capabilities and how important they are to the US, but you don't really need to read these. Unless you're a YouTuber and you want to look smart, these leaks are redundant. Commit suicide.
I remember that.
Bro, did we just find a dead person in the suicide forest?
We don't even flinch when the world calls upon us to film ourselves making out with our own sisters. If anyone's brave enough to sneak into the world's most significant CIA base, it's us. Now, these stories of Pine Gap guiding missiles into Iraqi weddings may sound like old news, but don't worry, Pine Gap's still as busy as ever. Right now, while Israel is on a rampant campaign to flatten Gaza so they can have more room to film their thirst traps, Pine Gap is in charge of providing targeting and analysis for their missiles, making sure that they hit the right hospitals and refugee camps and churches.
These are the people going to war
now. Because of Pine
now.
Gap, Australia is directly responsible for the death of 28,000 Palestinian civilians so far. And we're not even at war with Palestine. While that's super illegal, it does kind of make sense, right? Pine Gap is, a big military base built on stolen indigenous land.
That's kind of disrespectful.
So only right for them to continue the proud tradition of wiping out indigenous populations across the world.
People dying like that in war and they're just taking it.
Now, in order to get to Pine Gap, we've got to fly in the middle of Australia to a town called Alice Springs. It's a popular tourist destination where you get to take your family. It's so whimsical. You've got indigenous people serving you champagne while you stroll through the desert. With all these fun activities, you wouldn't even know that the CIA tracks every single person who enters the town.
Security services of the U.S., Australia, and our allies would typically be alert to anyone who might be coming into the town.
So we figured now that we're on a plane flying to Alice Springs, the only way to not blow our cover in a town full of American spies is to blend in. We're not Aussie YouTubers, we're not collaborating with friendly Geordies to sneak into one of the world's most important CIA bases. No, we're just one of the hundreds of regular, everyday American spies in Alice Springs. Now, we definitely weren't expecting this in the middle of the Outback, but there were American accents everywhere.
I think I might have spotted a few spies.
What country is this in?
And And Geordie didn't waste any time. He went straight in to investigate.
What are you guys doing?
Now, they may have pulled some fancy CIA mind tricks and managed to convince Geordie they weren't spies, but the rest of us weren't so easy to fool.
So conspiratorial.
They're Americans who live in Alice.
I have a way with an American accent. He's a spy. He's different. Where did they say they work? These are the mines, dude.
Yeah, they work in the mine. Look, we just have to agree to disagree about these men we encountered at the airport. Or whatever. Geordie's probably got bigger problems to focus on, like the fact that his house got firebombed and he's receiving death threats from the mob because of his political YouTube videos. Either way, we obviously weren't going to make any big discoveries by speculating on random Americans we find in the airport lobby. So we decided to get into the car and drive through Arunda country to get to Alice Springs.
Oh, indigenous trap house.
What the fuck are the Americans doing out?
Well, he's in New Cardi, but I don't see him.
In all honesty, we're a bit lost out here, so we thought the best first stop would be the Tourism Information Centre.
Are there any tours of Pine Gap?
Are there any viewing spots? Because I know Mount Gillen, you could see it.
No, you can't.
No, this is a very strong.
When you drive onto that road, it tells you to stop.
Perfect.
So if you attempt to go into Pine Gap, you'll be quite.
We don't want to go in.
Polite, it doesn't matter. Yeah. You'll be politely asked to look. There's nothing to see there. They only apparently have gardens there, you know. So.
It turns out getting into the base isn't as simple as we thought, and our spy disguises weren't working very well either.
Why have you got the same ties on? Yeah. Wearing suits, you stand out like.
If we want to sneak in successfully, we'll need to study the American spies in their natural habitat. And if you watch as many spy movies as we do, you'd know that the best place to find spies is at the casino. Luckily, there's a massive one just outside of town.
Is that true?
This place is so American. Now, this casino was not at all what we expected. There was country music everywhere. It felt like they had airlifted Texas and dropped it in the middle of Australia. Now, obviously, we did what we had to do to fit in. We had to gamble. You know, we didn't want to gamble, but we couldn't blow our cover either. And the fact that we do this in every single video we film with Friendly Geordies is just coincidental, and you shouldn't look into it. So we're in the middle of nowhere, right? Most of the patrons in this Outback casino are Indigenous Australians. But then, no joke, everyone else is literally an American who works at the big CIA base just out of town. It's insane. Now, we obviously came here as a joke, right? We didn't expect to actually see American spies, but there they were, just chilling, just hanging out after work, playing some weird American game called shit or poos or no, it was craps. It's called craps.
What's it like living here? It seems a bit. We've been here for like 6 hours. Yeah, they're really.
Now, I really wasn't expecting them to be this open about working at Pine Gap.
What are you doing there? Secret stuff.
It felt like they were all trying to impress us and outdo each other with how fancy their security clearance was.
First of all, don't listen to this guy. This guy doesn't get it. Don't listen to him. So he's just making it up.
But I have to say, for a foreign army operating a top secret CIA base in the middle of our country, they were kind of fun to hang out with.
Look at this, I'm rich. Get your money, bro.
Look, we had a fun time. It's a pity they'll probably hate us tomorrow night once they find out the guys they were gambling with the night before were going to sneak into their workplace the next morning.
Wait, did he sneak? He didn't never sneak into the workplace.
Now, craps, playing some weeps.
6 hours. Yeah, they're really.
What are you doing there? Secret stuff.
It felt like they were all trying to impress us and outdo each other with how fancy their security clearance was.
First of all, don't listen to this guy. This guy doesn't get it. Don't listen to him. So he's just making it up.
But I have to say, for a foreign army operating a top secret CIA base in the middle of our country, they were kind of fun to hang out with.
Because they're the best actors. You need to know how to be. You need to know how to get suspicion out of them. You need to know how to not look suspicious. So
look, we had a fun time. It's a pity they'll probably hate us tomorrow night once they find out the guys they were